So Sean, what's up? What's the big news?
Warm greetings. That's true, Edrenka. A lot to talk about. Of course, within the limited time, we have to restrict that to one particular story for the most part. And tonight, for this segment, the same applies. Let's look at a story that may miss many people. The Elmo Stout High School, they're doing something phenomenal. They are placing emphasis and turning the spotlight on suicide in young people. In fact, a session coming up on March 5th at the Elmo Stout High School campus in Lecture Room 2, starting at 5 p.m. on that day, will be titled Understanding Depression and Suicide in Young People. And you know, within recent times, particularly in 2014 and 2013, if I'm not mistaken, we had some incidents of suicides in the territory. One on Virgin Gorda, we had one on Just Van Dyke, we had a situation with a young man here on Tortola as well. And when we look at these occurrences, we know we have a problem. In fact, the 2012 Youth Health and Sexuality Report gave us some statistics that are quite alarming. We learned that some 64% of young people in the age group 15 and younger to 16 actually thought of committing suicide. In the category 17 to 19, some 64% as well. So a large percentage of young people out there are having challenges, and in many cases they're actually considering suicide.
And what's happening at the Elmo Stout High School that is going to address this particular issue?
Well, that's a very interesting development, I find, because many people, you know, we've all saw the reports, we've talked about incidents of suicide, but can you recall any actual activity focusing on the causes and helping parents, in this case, and guardians to get a better understanding of what's happening? I can't recall. So this is really something, it's a wonderful step. I think they're making a step in the right direction. I'm not sure how the session would be conducted, but with the facilitator coming out of the ministry, in fact, I'm advised that there will be Miss Brenda Foy from the Community Mental Health Unit. I'm not sure if other people or other professionals would join her, but certainly the information that she would bring to bear, I can imagine would be quite useful.
Well, we had Ms. Foy and Dr. Samuel on Spotlight, I think, late last year or earlier this year, I can't remember, talking about depression in young people and a tendency towards suicide. I don't know, we haven't been able to address the causes. It seems as though we are focused on how to identify children who might have a tendency towards suicide, but and how to prevent, to change their minds, to prevent that tendency or to change their minds. But we I've not heard of us addressing the cause. You've heard, is there anything about what's happening at Elmo Stout High School or what's happening in the mental health department that's addressing the cause of, or what the potential cause of suicide may be?
And I would agree. I haven't really heard enough. Yes, you hear conversations from time to time, but marriage and family therapist, Dr. Cindy George, she did share some tips, some clues with us as to how loved ones, persons, we all can go about, I wouldn't say preventing, but in this case, she's really laying out a roadmap that one can use. And I'm sure she has much more information to share, so persons can probably approach her, and maybe we'll hear more from Brenda Foy. But let's hear Dr. George in this particular interview we had in 2014.
Sometimes we ask ourselves, could I have prevented my loved one from committing suicide? And a lot of times, you know, we get guilty about that. We cannot necessarily prevent them, but we can help in the process, on the progress of how they do get to that point. For example, in our connectedness and in our communications with our loved ones, we may, as an example, want to begin somewhat of a contract with them. And what I mean by that is we can say, well, let's begin to have lunch. Let's set up a lunch date every other day. Let's go to the movies every Saturday. And what you're doing is you're developing a sense of connectedness to that individual whereby they become obligated to other things and their sense of belonging becomes more. And you can take these opportunities to begin to speak to what is frustrating them, what is hurting them, what is on their mind. And so it's really a strategy to allow that loved one to stay connected, to not be alone. Because again, persons that are left alone are more than likely to commit suicide than someone who is surrounded by loved ones.
So I glean from Dr. George's comments there that you want to keep the lines of communication open, and I don't think you would necessarily want to do so only when someone looks depressed. She's basically saying, let's develop healthy relationships with loved ones. And this is really a community approach that we all should take in terms of ensuring that persons don't go that route.
I agree with her, Sean. I think it's a good idea. And I had a personal experience with one of my daughters who I didn't think she was leaning towards suicide, but certainly she was going through a difficult time. And just taking the time to talk to her and ask her, well, what's going on, and give her some advice and show her a different way to deal with certain situations. It perked her up, and I got the sense that I need to talk to her more often in that way. So I think paying attention to our young people, being able to identify when something is troubling them and coax them into to having a conversation and perhaps offering them some suggestions about the things that they need to deal with.
And it should be ongoing.
Could be helpful, yes, and it should be ongoing. There should be a relationship established where you have, the lines of communication remains constantly open. So I think that's a good idea. And over the next several months, I think I'm going to start focusing more on these types of social issues, the psychological, the mental, social issues that's troubling many of us in the community, not just children, but young adults and even older adults like me got problems too.
So it's really I think not just this March 5th particular session, understanding depression and suicide in young people, but I'm quite hopeful that other agencies, other stakeholders in the society would be looking at hosting similar activities going forward, so we can really help to develop this aspect of the society in terms of how we keep our people much more appreciated and not healthy. Wanting. That's right, mentally healthy. That's right, and not going along the route of thinking of suicide, because we must bear in mind that suicide is actually one of the one of three leading causes of death for people between ages 15 to 44.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. That's an interesting discussion right there, and hopefully in the months ahead we could bring more attention and more focus on prevention of depression and suicide.
And not necessarily focusing on cure.
Yes.